Let's make realistic flower petals from our scraps. Hello and welcome to the Treasured Page. I'm Melanie and this is our quiet crafting space. Well, today you're joining me as I'm trying to figure out how I can make a really nice large flower to fit onto a journal page. So I'm going to have a look at the materials that are in front of me. I've got some very basic supplies here, from the kitchen towel to tissue paper from packaging. I've got the backing of napkins where the top colourful sheet has been removed and I've just got the blanks. I've got a coffee filter paper and I've got some book page, which is very thin dictionary paper. That's quite an old vintage one. And I've got some fabric here, and if I find anything else along the way I'll pull that in too. So what I want to do is bring in my inks, my pigments, my dyes, anything that I can get my hands on that can stain paper, and this way I can give you some insight on how you can achieve a look. You can pick out what works for you, what supplies you have, because we've all got different ones. Now I've been digging out inks and things. I've got the standard ones that I always use on this channel, which are my distressed inks. They're my go-to inks, but really nice to be able to look at colours I don't always use. So I'm going to be looking at colours in a nice springtime flower shade. I've also found some other inks which I have had and have not used. They have been in the cupboard. I've only just discovered or remembered that I had them this morning, and they're very lovely inks, but I don't tend to use them purely because they don't stack together and I lose them, and they're a very odd shape for me. So they're fine in a box like that, but I don't use them. But what I've got here is some quite nice flower colours, so there's some good colours there that may work. I got these nearly 5 years ago, and whether there's any ink, you know, we'll have to have a look at that, see if we can revive them. I've also got some watercolour paints here, and I've got some alcohol ink markers, so I'm going to show you all of that. All right, let's have a look. So what I want to do is I want to make some petals. That's really what I want to achieve. I want to dive into this. Now, if you'd like to have a go, then you're going to need, first of all, to shut that door. You're going to need to create a little space for yourself where you can just snuggle in and have a go at this quiet craft. Just focus in for an hour and see what you can achieve. Get a nice drink, settle in, and get a few things together like you're seeing here. Some absorbent papers. Let's start off with something that we might have. Some absorbent paper from the kitchen, even from the bathroom. Let's see if you can get some papers together. And then something we may all have is some forlorn forgotten pens at the back of the drawer. So I've got a highlighter there. That's the first experiment. I'm just going to see what I can achieve with basic supplies I think we all might be able to find. All right, I'm protecting the work surface with this silicone mat. I've got a sheet of kitchen towel and I'm going to fold it in half to give me double. I'm going to take my pen. I'm hoping that it works, and because I want, let's have a look, because I want a nice leaf shape, or petal shape, I'm going to be drawing this petal shape here, just like an egg, really, like that. I'll just bring that down a bit, and that's, you could draw around a spoon, you know, so that's the sort of thing. So that's what I've got so far. Now what I want to do is wet it, so you're going to need some water. So you could have a paintbrush, you could have a water spray. So napkin, highlighter pen and some water, and I'm just going to see if I can soak this in a little bit of water and see what happens. Okay. So the ink seems to be wicking away, not in. That's really interesting, because what I want it to do is I want it to wick in. I'd like this area covered. Okay, that's interesting. So can we do something in reverse? All right, now we've learnt that it wicks away rather than wicks in. Let's see if I can do something that makes it want to wick out. So I'm doing 2 colours now. I'm going to take the pink and go round my yellow and create a shape like that. Now I'll put the water directly in the middle and let's see what we get. So now I'm getting a variation of colour. I'm getting yellow, I'm getting orange, and I'm getting this pink. That's really, really cool. This time I'm going to put some pink in the middle, some pink around there like that, yellow in the middle but leaving a gap. So now I'm doing a rainbow but I'm leaving gaps. See what this gives me. Shot of water. So it's very interesting how it wicks away. Okay, I'm going to do one more. This time I'm going to put yellow right in the centre. I'm going to do more random now. I'm going to sort of scribble like a more random like that. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of yellow around the outside, just a little bit. And then more random again around the outside, slightly overlapping them. Not being so defined, just feathering it, so just scribbling it. Okay, let's see what this one gives me. Just one shot of water in the middle. All right, I'm liking this. This is more random, so I'm almost wondering if I could just dab a little bit of pink in the middle there. I think I prefer that. So I haven't got a block of colour, whereas I had for those two, and that looks very defined, whereas this is more organic, and I think that's the sort of style I'm looking for. 2 more. I think I might be able to use these. So just a shot of water in there. That's nice. Okay guys, I'm liking this, so I'm going to leave these to dry. Okay, that was fun. Took no more than 5 minutes, and this is the sort of thing that we're using. So I'm going to take another one, fold it in half. I'm folding it in half because I will probably get the seep through on the back, so we end up with 2 pieces of paper at the end that we'll be able to do something with. Alright, next experiment, cutting them into thirds. So I've now got 3 to play with, and I'm going to have a look at these inks. I have no idea if there's any life left in them, but I'm getting out all the colours that remind me of this flower. I really love roses and peonies. Those are my favourites, and we do see peonies appear in May, in springtime here in the UK. So that's where my inspiration's coming from, and the peony flower is actually native to America. So it does very well over here in the UK. Now this one is called Rosebud, so that's nice and fitting. And yeah, I'm not sure if there's much in the way of ink here, but it's quite a nice shape, so we'll go with that. It probably would benefit if I put some water on the ink pad, but I'm going to be doing that anyway. Daubing them on, see what happens. I've got some mauve colour. This one's lavender, so they're all flower colours. Perhaps that's why I bought them. This one's plum. So yeah, it might give me a variation of colour. I'll just put them on like that. So those have all been dabbed on, just replicating some of what I'm seeing here. I can always put in this little green or brown bit. I love that, so that's pretty as well. And then just putting some water on. So let's see how these inks do. I'm putting more water over the top with the same technique as before, just spraying it on. Any water spray would do, any pump action spray, anything that you've got. Maybe you use that for plants or something. It's sticking with that shape, that's not dispersing. Okay, that's good to know. I'm just going to use a paintbrush and some water. I couldn't find anything larger. Just dabbing it on, so if you haven't got a sprayer, we can always just have a go with a paintbrush. Just dab that on Wondering if that would control things a bit better with the paintbrush. I don't know if I can diffuse that shape, doesn't look like it, whereas everything else seems to have dispersed behind it apart from that shape there. So the other thing that we could do is dip it in water so it wicks up. Let's have a look at that and see if that does anything. So I'm just putting the water at the bottom. Let's just put a splash and then let that suck up. So this is really what the tissue is designed to do. It's very absorbent. That should draw up the ink and the pigment. All right, so there are some more ideas. They are quite fun. They're not necessarily going all the way through. Let's have a look. Yeah, they're sort of going all the way through. So you might have a subtle difference on the one underneath. That one is just going to be very subtle. But those, you know, that's an interesting thing. So it's whatever you've got really. So let's take these and put those off to dry. And now I'm going to have another play around with the ink pads, but this time, instead of putting it on directly and creating a mark, I'm going to use my paintbrush and just see if I can get any pigment on that way. I'm just wondering if I might be able to do that. Now the brush is wet. All right, so this is just another technique of using the inks. I mean, that works really nicely. So this is a great idea, I think, just daubing the ink around using a damp paintbrush. I think that that one's fine. What I'll do is I'll give that a shot of water and let that disperse out as well. So let's do a similar thing. I'm just going to put the pigment down onto the tissue in the same way that I did with this one. Okay, washing out the brush now, just taking some of this. This one is worn lipstick. That's nice. Nice colour there. Now I've got the tissue wet. I'm just wondering whether these are designed to be more movable ink. I've let that dry. Let's just see what actually, let's put a bit more. What else have I got? I've got this one, which is abandoned coral. So we just put that on. And a little bit of seedless preserve. All right, now are we going to still get that stain? Is that going to move? Let's give it a good squirt. Oh, they are lovely colours. They are really, now this is colours that you would see in nature. So that's why these inks are very, very pretty. Whereas the highlighter was really bright, these are very natural. This is almost coming into this. Not that this is natural, this is just a silk flower and it's shot bought. But those are lovely colours. All right, let's just bring these back. So we've got these quite pink ones, whereas these are quite natural colours. I think they're quite natural, but they are a little bit darker where I've got that one in the middle there. So I bought these inks the same year, 2020, 2021. I haven't put any re-inker on it. I hardly ever use this colour. So it has reacted with the water. It's done what it says on the tin. I'm very pleased with the inks that I use here on the channel. Happy to promote them. These are lovely colours, so I did like them. But they haven't transferred through tissue paper when using with water, so these distress inks are very good at being water soluble. All right, good to know. So the distressed inks have held up to their claim to fame of being highly water soluble and highly pigmented, and I would agree with that. I'm very happy with those results. This is why these are a go-to art supply here at the Treasured Page. And I am not sponsored by anybody. This is truly my opinion. So I'm happy to continue with the distress inks because I've seen that they work really nicely on tissue. So now I feel like if I wanted to put anything down on something a little bit more difficult to come by, I would be using the right product. So that's good. Now I'm cutting some strips from a napkin. I've got, this is 2-ply, so I haven't separated them. I just took the top layer off, so it was 3-ply, it's now 2-ply, and these have not been separated. So there is 2 sheets here still stuck together, which gives it a little bit of thickness. And I'm just dividing these up into quarters just to give myself some material to do my experiments on. So now some of you may not have the inks for stamping, so it's great to go through your pen collection and see what you've got. Definitely use the inks there. Okay, I've just got some sample pieces here of napkin. I want to do a little experiment with watercolor paints and see what I can get with the pigments here. So I'm just going to spray some water. Alright, I've got some watercolour paints here, and this one I'm going to soak the tissue paper in water first, so that should be quite fun to watch. So I'm putting that out. You can see that there is some image from the napkin on there already, but let's have a look what I've got. I've got another paintbrush here. I'm going to do brown on this side and then I'm going to do colour on the other. I think I'll start with my colour. I don't know what this is. This one looks like a neon colour. Oh yeah, no, that was a neon. Okay, well we'll just do some little bits all the way across, and then bring in something a little bit more strong and just stick with the pink colour tones, try and do a variation of colour. What else have I got here? Okay. Just all along there, like that. All right, and then, oh gosh, that's beautiful. Isn't that lovely? Can just imagine that as a flower. Beautiful colours. So we've got carmine, we've got cerise, and then I had a neon pink colour going down there. So that is lovely. I'm happy with that as a flower colour, which you would obviously expect having a set of watercolours. So that is great. This one I'm going to try and achieve similar effects with my distressed inks. So I thought that that was quite a good idea to wet the tissue. Right, I'm going back in with this purple seedless preserves, and I'm just directly putting a water paintbrush onto the ink pad, and I'm getting this lovely colour along there, coral colour, abandoned coral, and I'm just able to put those colours in. So I think if you've got a few packs of ink pads, you might be able to create this sort of a look without having to invest in expensive paints. And of course you've got the highlighter pen. So some of the highlighter pink colours may be able to be knocked back with your standard stamping ink if it's water soluble. This wouldn't work if you've got the StazOn, if you've got the archival ink, because they're oil based. So they do need to be your water soluble one, just your standard ink ones. I just think these are great. They're so versatile. Okay, and the other thing is, if you've got any ink sprays from the distress range, you could maybe use that. So we could look at sort of putting a few drops of that on there like that. So this is distress ink being used on this one. I'm not sure about the chalky finish on that, but this is very beautiful. But I'm getting something I really like here as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit more water, and I'm going to get sort of move that about. I think I'm getting away with this because it's a double thickness paper. I think if I'd tried to do this on the paper napkin, it wouldn't have been quite so robust. So if you're looking to keep your craft costs down, but you're looking for a winning finish, I think that a little tin of inks that you build up over time would be great. This is how I've done it. I collect them over years, not all at once. So if I'm just buying one or a pack of 4, then that's something that I would do every 6 months. And I get the tins and I know that 5 years later, I can still use this colour just by putting some water on it. That is the beauty of those. So I've got this burnt umber colour here. I'm just going to put that across. I might want a green thinking about it. Okay, I've got a little bit of a green colour here, like a grass green coming in now. And again, I think I'm just going to need more water and get that pigment moving. And then when these dry, I can cut these out, and I'm hoping that these will be my petals. Distress ink, I've got some forest moss. This is probably too dark. Let's just put that down. Actually, it's quite a muddy green anyway, so that's all right. I'm okay with that. I think that's plenty though. And I've got rusty hinge to hand, so. And then I've also got rusty hinge, so I'll just put that in there as well. Great. Great. Final shot of water just to super saturate everything and let it all blend together. And I'm going to leave that to dry. Turn this upside down so I've got space to have a go with another one here. We've used our inks. That was the distress ink, that was paints, and now the other thing I want to use is alcohol ink, which isn't water soluble. Alright, I've got some alcohol inks here. These are very inexpensive, they're an unknown brand, very, very cheaply bought. Just bought literally for some pigment, not for any particular longevity or fancy idea. I just wanted to have some alcohol inks to do experiments with. Bought them ages ago for some other project, and with alcohol ink you need to have alcohol to make it disperse. Now I like the idea that I saturated the paper first so that I could get the ink to move. I want to do the same thing, but I can't put water on. But what I can put is alcohol. So I have got some alcohol spray, and this is only if you've got it is this going to be of any interest to you. But I'm just going to quickly sort of soak it on one side. I've got to move quick because otherwise it will dry. So I'm putting 1 drop on. Now, I just don't want to use too much because, you know, these things are more expensive. Alright, they're quite nice colours, and that's dispersing quite nicely. Alright, so I've put my yellow on. And this is a red, a little bit of brown down the bottom here. Okay, I've had a bit of an ink spillage, so I'm just spraying my scissors off here and letting that pink ink, which just exploded everywhere, run onto the tissue because I don't want to waste it and I need it on the tissue. So just wipe my scissors off. I was just cutting the lid off of it because it just needed to be cut off. So this one has been a messy procedure. Alright, we got through that. Alright, I'm just going to mop up the excess here on a second tissue because that was quite a lot dripping off of there, and I don't want to waste that lovely ink colour, so I'm just collecting that up onto this tissue. I had more control over the inks that I use that are water soluble from Ranger, that's the distress inks there, whereas these were the alcohol inks. Very, very high definition of colour so far. Look good. They're yet to dry. And then, of course, this was the watercolour, which is a lot more easy to manage with a paintbrush. So we'll wait and have a look and see what they look like when they're dry, and then you can see the results. Okay, the results are in. These are the experiments so far. They have all dried, and I can show you that we've got the alcohol ink ones over here. These are the very bright ones. These are the ones that have come off of these little memento inks. So they are looking like this on the tissue paper. So lovely colours all blended in. They've blended in nicely. We've got some good colour, but you can see it's not seeped through to the back of the tissue paper. So even though they were soaking wet, they did not go through all the way. So that's that one. But the colour is pretty. So it's good. It works. It's just not very strong. Whereas these ones are extremely strong, very, very vibrant right the way through. And they are kind of cool and grungy, so lots of variation of colour within them, and have dried in an interesting way depending on the spray of the alcohol ink ones. So those were these little inks here. I think any alcohol ink would operate in the same manner, so they are brilliant, but they're a messy business. They're a bit expensive, but you definitely end up with a very interesting piece of paper that you could then use to collage or create. Right. And then when we started with just our office supplies, the highlighter pens, and we have got this, as expected, very, very bright because it was highlighter ink. That was the first one, so it did sort of dry and disperse, but we can't tell that there was a shape. So that's kind of cool. Then this was blended, these ones. We seem to have got some staining there where it hasn't moved. The ink is just sort of sitting on the top, and over the back they haven't come through to the back at all. Well, they just didn't do that. So most of the colour is right on the surface of all of these. So they've all done the same thing. Nothing much going right the way through. But some of them are a bit darker than others depending on how much ink was used, but even then we didn't get too much bleed through onto the back, which I suppose is a good thing, and the pens are designed to do that. They're not meant to leak through paper, so as an office supply that isn't really what you want. You don't want the ink bleeding through to the other side of the paper, so that's what they're designed to do, sit on the surface, and they do a very good job of that, and you can see that's how that's worked out. Then I ran a hot iron over this one just to see if I could get rid of the little dimple marks on the paper from the kitchen towel, and it hasn't really worked. But if you're cutting out small pieces and you want that vibrant colour, or even if you want to blend it in with some other ink or a browner tone, you could definitely create petal colours that would work for flowers. So it was really worthwhile having a look at the ink pens in our office supplies. Now this was seedless preserves and worn lipstick, and that has worked out like that on there, which is slightly different tones to what we're seeing over here with the memento ink, and it's dispersed nicely. And then on the backs, oh, that was the front. Oh wow, so there we go, that was even the back, so that's the front. So they're very lovely. Then we had the watercolour. This is this one, absolutely beautiful, nice big bright colours there, real lovely definition, just what you'd expect from a watercolour. It's gone pretty much right the way through, although that is a lot paler. There are two tissue papers here, so I could pull one apart, but even then it hasn't really gone through. It has remained on the top, so the pigment is still sitting on the top of that paper. And then this one is, I think, the closest match to this flower in terms of the colour I was sort of looking at. In fact, it's almost a perfect replica. I'm really pleased with that. And this is from these inks here. So this is all these inks there. So that was rusty hinge and green moss down the bottom. You can see there's a yellow separation from the rusty hinge, and then we've got these colours here, and the whole thing is making up this flower colour there. So I thought that was excellent. So between these two, they are my favourites. There are more variation of colour, more control over the colour using a paintbrush, and that is fantastic. These I think are beautiful, but they're very bright. Probably a little bit too bright for what I want, and not as much control. I did like this one where I've put the brown down the bottom, and we've got three colours on there, yellow, orange, and then the brown, so we can see the reds and the orange tones there, and that is great. And as a flower, I'm sure that you know, that would definitely look the part, look beautiful. But it is quite bright, and I've got to replicate this again to make my flower petals, and I'm not sure I want to put myself through the mess that that I had to go through. Okay, so now I've got another napkin here, just in case anyone's not aware. There are 3 sheets to a napkin. I'm leaving 2 on the bottom, and I'm removing the top one just by peeling them apart. I might use the foliage here for my page decoration. That's the idea anyway. So what I want to do is just cut these into petal shapes, and I really am just going to use this as my guide. I got petal shapes that look like that. Now they were all attached in one 5 shape, so that was all a circle with bits cut out, but I want to have individual petals, and I think that where I can see here that the dye or the paint or the stain, whatever we've used, it's been sucked up at the edges. I quite like that, so I want to have cut edges for my petals, and to do that I'm going to be folding it in half and in half again, and then create myself enough. So now I'm going to cut my petal shapes out of here, but I don't want to have the edge of a napkin where you've got the dimples, because as we've seen, they don't always iron out, and I'm looking for a really nice end result. So I'm just going to go round with some rough petal shapes, just looking at the flower that I had, just doing some sort of archways really. I'm going to come in like that, and then I'm going to cut away, or I'm just going to cut away the bottom like that. So there are a few petals we should be able to see. We've got 4 petals just from that one cut, and those are the ones that I'm going to start painting. So actually that one has ended up with a little bit of the dimple on. I'm going to discard those because I just don't want to have that in my final project. Let's say that that's the bottom. I'll just cut off a section here, bring it round again. It doesn't matter particularly because they're going to get crinkled up. So we've got more petals here. Okay, I've got my petals all laid out. That took no time at all. When you fold the napkin over on itself, you can get 4 out of one cut. So that was really quick. I've also got some book page down here. So I've got some ideas. I just want to put some water on them. So a shot of water on everything, just to stop them moving around and to get that paint to move. I'm just making sure everything's dampened down to begin with. Okay, everything is dampened down now. The fun bit, I'm just going to try and find them. They've all become invisible, and I'm going to put my paints on. So I'm going to go with the similar colours that I chose before, and I'm going to be using my inks here. I think for a very quick application you could use Tim Holtz sprays and spritz across on a much larger surface. So potentially what I could do is put a bin bag over the top of my kitchen table and have lots down, and then I could cut them out afterwards. But I just like the idea of this quiet craft be sitting here. I don't think this is going to take me long at all. And when I start putting the colour along the top here, if I start doing it pretty much for all the larger pieces, and then keep coming in with the shot of water just to blend that watercolour out, I'm going to, because I've got both things to hand, I'm probably going to do a combination of both the ink here that we saw. So I've got my coral colour here. I'm going to start putting that on, and just between the two colours of the Tim Holtz ink and also the watercolour, I feel that I can create something quite petal-like and to tie in with what I was seeing originally on this silk flower, which did come from a hat. And so the idea of having the hat and the vintage hat is because often for spring we do associate flowers being put in the hair of young girls growing up, a bit of a folklore as well. We always start decorating flowers on hats around springtime, have done for millennia, and that is to welcome in spring. You know, we're delighted to see the flowers come back, and we always have been. And that would have been a cause for celebration after a long winter to start seeing things flowering, plants growing. That meant a good crop. That meant that we wouldn't go hungry. So we can. I'm just putting a little bit of this brighter colour in. I can see some of this is tearing, so perhaps that one. I don't think it matters. I just think when these dry and they're a little bit torn and tattered around the edges, that's just going to add to the effect, the more natural, you know, the more scrunched up and slightly grunge look. I think we'll get away with it. So I might want to even just mix a bit of paint here, just where I've got a little bit of space, and then I can start adding it onto my book page here. Look, just do a lovely colour wash over everything down here, and I just think that that's going to come together quite quickly. It really does react very well over the top of paper, so that's fun. You have to be a bit careful of the tissue paper because it could tear. So I'm going to bring in some of this purple. I want to have variations and I want it to be different, so some of these are going to be purple, and then when they're put together we should start to see the variation of colour that I'm seeing in this flower. And the other thing was this ink as well, so I want to just bring more colour over here. That's a bit brighter, but then I've got to remember that these dry lighter, so I don't need to shy away from the bright colours. Also, one of these flowers is going to end up going to my swap partner, and she's indicated that she quite likes bright colours, so I don't feel too held back by that at all. And I love the ethereal look of this that we had going on there, so I've got to keep on with my distress ink. I don't know if we had the coral, did we? Let's have the coral colour. I think we've had that one. Almost want to just do that, but I know that that can leave a mark, so I have to be a little careful of that. Just dab it in places. Just bring some of this ink. This is the oxide ink, but actually it seemed to work out quite nicely, so I'm just going to put that in there as well. I think this would work really nicely with white coffee filter paper, the basket ones that you can get. We don't use them so much in the UK, so they're not readily available, and in fact I've only actually got one here. I did have a box of them and I can't find them anywhere, but let's just have a quick demonstration of what this might do. So if I put the water on it, it's designed to wick the water, soak it up, and then if I put stain on it, it really is sucking that in there. So that's quite a good little experiment there. And then just more, yeah, I think that that's going to be quite beautiful on a coffee filter paper. The fact that it's brown is quite fun as well. All right, put that over here. Okay, so just put a lot of colour up the top there. And now what I want to do is put green down the bottom Let's get that wet. Put some green down the bottom and brown. Brown. Just percolate through and hopefully come up with another layer that I could add in there. Nice bright colour. And now at the bottom of a petal we often see a yellow seeping up, as we've seen here with the rusty hinge. So let's do that down here, and then that might give me that nice yellowing effect. To the point where I'm quite happy with it. I've had a lovely time. It's been really great. I'm now going to let them dry and then we'll come back and we'll see what we've got. Okay guys, I'd like you to look at this. This has been an incredible experiment and I am looking at these amazing petals. Now they're not totally dry. They're probably 50% dry. Some are drier than others. This is what we started out as a reference point, a little guide, something to aim for. The inspiration was a silk flower. Looking at hats and millinery, we're going to perhaps be able to tie this together into a page, but looking at what I've got here, I'm incredibly excited because I can see that although they're thin, they're quite strong, and as they're drying they're becoming a little bit more brittle, more pliable. But when you piece them together, when you overlap them, when you've got the variation of colour, there's a reality there to it. It looks quite real. They feel like petals, they're nice and thin. They can be flat on a page even, but still look three-dimensional because of the texture, because of the crinkle, because of the variation of colour. So these are all working out, even just 3 on a page as decoration for some of the other things that we might like. Putting that at the top of a page with a circular button or a punched out piece from a nice decorative paper, or a circle punch that looks like a button. You know, these look like petals from a rose. They look like they've been collected up and pressed. You could even put them behind perspex and laminate them and almost feel like you've got something that is reminiscent of a petal of a flower. So if I start piecing it together with some of the book page, and they're still a little bit soggy, but I just want to show you the general idea, is that you can build them up and have layers, and then we can have, you know, more like that and be able to just piece them together as petals or roses. How about we have it like that? And they can become clusters in their own right. Well, that's all to be played with, but this was the first step. This was playing around and recreating petals, something that we could have a look and make flowers out of. Now you don't have to, you can make flowers any way you like. If you're wanting to have a go at this and you're looking to embellish a page, then by all means cut out your book page and you could put some stain or ink onto them, but cut out your petal shapes and ink round the edges, and then be able to just start piecing together your flowers. And you, even with just the book page, and variation of colour as well, you can get something really, really reminiscent of the flower that we're aiming for. Even that, and then maybe greenery and a leaf and something circular at the bottom to look like the centre of a flower. But I'm so excited by this, and even this one here where I've used the oxide ink, you can see how it's gone into the cracks, and the fact that that's torn, well, the grungy junk journalists amongst you are going to be really excited by that. And you could even put an extra stain in that portion to emphasize the hole in the petal and make it look like a dried flower, so you can variate your colors. Once these are dry, you can then emphasize the areas with ink, the way that we would normally do, maybe with green ink or the dark browns, and you can emphasize the whole. If you want to add some more strength to it, what I will be doing is watering down some PVA glue, and I will coat everything just to give it a more longevity, just give it more of a flexible coating. I don't want them to go flat, but I want them to have some rigidity. I would like them to be able to be a bit more flexible and less breakable. I think that's what I'm getting at. So that would be my solution. So that would be my solution by making a solution of PVA, half and half PVA to half water mixture, and then just painting it all over. It may blend the colours again, but that's okay because it's already happened anyway. And then from there you've got these workable pieces that you will be able to put on a page. So I'll just get one and we'll see what that's going to look like. That's just paper, but it is very fine paper out of a dictionary book. So that's how that one was looking. But let's have a look at some of these petals that have been created just with the inks, with the watercolor paints. Watercolor paints that I've had for a really long time. Don't tend to use them. I'm not sure I want to mark my page, and this isn't 100% dry, so I'm just going to put this together in my hand and then we'll offer it up. But I think these are a real success, and yes, they're just tissue paper, but I think you can sort of piece them together, particularly if you live somewhere. You know, shout out to all the girls in Texas, and you know, I know you've got your cactus flowers and things like that, but if you're wanting to have a look at how you could bring in the romance of the petals of a rose or something really fragile, definitely do it with your napkin papers or absorbent papers and coffee filter papers. Now this is the fun part, when they have become quite dry, just peeling them off the paper and having a look and seeing what we've got. Some of them are stuck together a bit. I have put some PVA glue over the top of these now, and there's still a little dampness to them, but they're feeling more stronger. And where I've got a little damaged bit there, I just think that adds to it. I think that that's great, you know, for grunge journaling. When you layer them, you're just going to see that fabulous texture. You're not going to worry too much. But while they're on the mat, this is just a silicone mat, so this will all wash off, no problem. You just put some plastic down. You can then dispose of it afterwards. But I think what I will do while I'm here and I've got the inks, I'm going to use a little bit of green, I think, on this one, and just sort of dab it in there and emphasize the fact that there's that damaged part, because then that looks a little bit like it could be drying out, like a dried flower. But you know, these are ideas, just things that you could play around with. Maybe a browner ink might do. This one is still a little bit damp, so I won't pull it, but you know, once they're off of the mat, they're fabulous. Look at them. Look, I mean, it's great. We've made petals, guys. We've made petals from just some old napkin. It's fun, and they're going to be beautiful in a journal. You can see, look, you can just see how they're going to look just by a few scrunched up pieces there. So let's just say this is our embellishment on a page. I might even have a corner tuck here so that this is embellished here, this beautiful flower. And then I can have things trailing up here, some stenciling, or I could use some of that napkin that I saw earlier, and then just put something in the middle. Even just some, you know, you could have a real grunge piece in the middle there like that. But just once you've got your circular piece in the middle, you can see how these petals really are very effective. And put it up here. Now we're thinking about fashion, so we could have something a little bit more embellished on there, and then have things that dangle down. Ribbons, a tattered, torn little something, and then just bring something in there like the high fashion. That could be, looks a little bit like a Coco Chanel flower, or just something pretty in the middle there, or even some gold paint, and then sew some beads on. You could sew something onto the other side and then cover that up on the other side with a pocket. So that's one idea of how you could tackle putting on a very flamboyant flower onto your page. You could then do a similar technique but do green, and then they could be the leaves and have that trailing down. Just an idea. I think it's fun, and it's this month's project, and if you'd like like to have a go, then I think that you'll really enjoy it. You can intersperse the petals with paper. They don't have to have been painted. They could be just music paper, or it could be dictionary paper. There we go. You can even add other book pages in there that haven't been painted, just to bring in a contrast of colour and just give it our junk journal feel. But that was junk, and we're just using pigments that we may have lying around the craft room, turning something from nothing into something very much treasured. So there we go, guys. I hope you've enjoyed looking at that. I've thoroughly enjoyed bringing you along for the ride. Right, I'm going to tidy up and I will be putting together my page in the next video. Now, the other thing we were looking at is the coffee filter paper. Ta-da! It's amazing. It's come out brilliantly. So that is a great material, nice and robust. So you could cut that up into the shapes, just some archways, and when they are crinkled up a bit, and you can even crinkle them up a little bit more, you know, don't be afraid. Make them look like petals. Just crinkle them up. They're going to look like that on a page. They're going to get crinkled up on a page anyway, so that's fine. We're looking for something vintage. We're looking for old vintage hats. Well, they're all crinkled up now, the old vintage hats, so just don't be afraid. And then you can put some ink, accent the little creases there, and start doing things like that. So that's what we're going to do in the next video, but I just wanted to bring you this cool way of being able to decorate the petals just using an old napkin, and then all of a sudden we've got something from nothing, providing you've got something to colour them with. And don't discard what's in your stationery drawer. Have a look and see what you could create some colour with today, and just have a play, have some fun time, something for you. Just settle into a quiet craft and just enjoy the process. Shut the world out, give yourself a moment, just enjoy a nice drink and time for you. Use different materials, see what scraps you've got, what book page you could bring in, anything really, something a bit porous that would suck up the colour, and then just make your petals and just think what you could do with that. And then you can add quotes, and you could add beads, and you could add flat swinging things. You could then you could have little tassels or things hanging off, and then, you know, maybe a button. That one's a bit boring, but perhaps if you had something white or yellow in the middle, or an ochre colour, or just paint it, you know, you've created something that could look really fun on a page. Or you could have a pocket, and then this is the decoration that goes on the top, like a fun cluster of little petals, nice and delicate, and could end up being very flat for something that needs to be 3D in a book. And I think we've achieved something really worthwhile here, so I really hope that there's an inspiration there for you to go and have a play, go and have a little moment in your quiet craft. Do please like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to follow along and see how this is all going to come together and become a gorgeous treasured page in a journal. All right, so thank you very much for joining me, and above everything else, just slow down and make crafting time for you. Bye bye now.